الله من يقرأ الفاتحة.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام تحية والإكرام على النبي الأمي العربي القرشي المكي المدني الهاشمي صاحب قاب قوسين محبوب رب المشرقين والمغربين، جد الحسن والحسين النبي الحرمين والإمام القبلتين والرسول الثقلين الذين سمي في السماء بأحمد وفي الأرض بأبي القاسم محمد. وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين المنتخبين المنتجبين، لا سيما بقية الله في الأرضين، روح وأرواح العالمين لتراب بمقدمه الفداء، واللعنة الدائمة الباقية على أعدائهم ومنكر فضائلهم وغاصب حقوقهم أجمعين من يوم عداوتهم إلى قيام يوم الدين. أما بعد، فقد قال الله سبحانه تبارك وتعالى في محكم كتابه ومتقن خطابه. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الله لا إله إلا هو الحي القيوم لا تأخذه سنة ولا نوم له ما في السماوات وما في الأرض من ذا الذي يشفع عنده إلا بإذنه يعلم ما بين أيديهم وما خلفهم ولا يحيطون بشيء من علمه إلا بما شاء وسع كرسيه السماوات والأرض ولا يعوده حفظهما وهو العلي العظيم. لا إكراه في الدين قد تبين الرشد من الغي، ومن يكفر بالطاغوت ويؤمن بالله فقد استمسك بالعروة الوثقى لا انفصام لها والله سميع عليم. بسائر صلوات على محمد for the greatness of Shuhada Karbala Risale. Salawat ala Muhammad. And to hasten the reappearance of our awaited Imam reciting the Lam Salawat ala Muhammad. We mentioned yesterday, day before yesterday, regarding Ayatul Kursi, the meaning regarding it, the benefits that accrue as a result of reciting it. And then we mentioned the meanings, the translation of this ayat and the points that arise from that in light of our theme, which is Tawheed according to the school of Ahlul Bayt al-Salam. And we had to add this sentence afterwards because there's many claimants and proponents and flag bearers, if you like, of Tawheed today. And not all of them are correct. There are people who claim to believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They say that we believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but when they speak about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then in reality sometimes they do kufr, which is disbelief, and sometimes they do shirk, which is to associate somebody else with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So therefore we had to add this sentence afterwards, Tawheed, according to Ahlul Bayt alayhi salatu wasalam. Why? Because yesterday we mentioned that it's only those individuals whom Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created in order for He to be recognized who can tell us about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, nobody else. Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salatu wa salam says in a supplication of his, which is a famous supplication, a famous dua, it's called Dua as-Sabah. It's recommended to be recited every morning. In that supplication, Imam alayhi salatu wa salam says, Ya man dalla ala dhatihi bidhati. He is praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala he says, oh, the one whose existence is a proof for his own existence. His existence is one that doesn't need any other proof other than the fact that he exists. Everybody else, you, I, and everybody else who want to talk about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will always say that, oh, look at the way the mountains are, that means Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala must exist. Look at the way the human being is, that means Allah must exist. Look at the heavens, the earth, the skies, the planets, the sun, the moon. Look at all of these things, and then you would understand that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala exists. But Imam alayhi salam says, no, none of these things. Because all of these things were created after me. When I was created, when I recognized Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I recognized Him because of His own existence. Therefore I have said, Ya man dalla ala dhatihi bidhati. O He whose existence, whose wujud, proof is only His own that His own essence is a proof of His existence. How can we understand that better? We come back to the ayat that we mentioned. So we mentioned Ayatul Kursi, and yesterday we mentioned that when he says وَسِعَ كُرْسِيُّ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ, it doesn't mean chair. It means, Imam alayhi salam was asked that, what does it mean وَسِعَ كُرْسِيُّ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ? That the kursi extends, it is over the heavens and the earth. Imam alayhi salatu salam replied, this refers to the knowledge of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That His knowledge encompasses the heavens and everything which is within it. That He knows everything. Everything that is in possibility. And even that which hasn't come into existence, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows about all of it. Then we have this next verse after Ayatul Kursi, which is a very important verse and very interesting verse. And sometimes perhaps one of the most misunderstood verse as well. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, after having spoken about His existence, the reason why He is the only one worthy of being worshipped, He is Hayyul Qayyum, He is everlasting, He will be there forever. Everything that is in the earth and the heavens belong to Him. He doesn't sleep, He doesn't need to rest. And all of this authority belongs to Him. Then He says, after that, straight away after that, what does He say? La ikraha fid-din. There's no compulsion when it comes to religion. So usually people stop here. At this point in the verse, they stop. And if you say to them, for example, brother, why don't you pray? They say to you, La ikraha fid-din. There's no compulsion in religion. Or you say to your sister, why don't you do hijab? You say, La ikraha fid din. There's no compulsion in religion. But in reality, what is this verse about? Is this what this verse is about? That if I don't want to do something, then I say La ikraha fid din. But this is like the verse in the Holy Quran which was revealed at the beginning of the prophetic mission when the prayer was ordained. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed a verse, said, La taqrabu salat. Don't go near the prayer. So people would stop here and say, the verse says don't go close to prayer. But the verse continues, وَأَنْتُمْ سُكَارَى, and when you are in the state of intoxication. And some of the Mufassirin of Holy Quran mention that this intoxication doesn't just refer to being intoxicated by alcohol, for example, or by drugs, but even the intoxication of sleep. It's mentioned from Rawayat from Ayyam that when you wake up and before you pray, you have to be in a state that you remember that you actually did the prayer. Sometimes you'll recall that with people who say, did you wake up and pray? And say, well, maybe I prayed, but I don't remember. Because I prayed in a state where I was half asleep. So even that would come under this definition. In any case, that's not the discussion today. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, La ikraha fid din, so whenever I don't want to do something, I say, La ikraha fid din, there's no compulsion in doing. Is this what this verse is about, or is it something else? So the Asbab al-Nuzul, the Shan al-Nuzul, the reason why this verse was revealed will tell us whether this is what this verse is about or not. It's mentioned, this point that we mentioned regarding Ayatul Kursi is mentioned in Tafsir Nur al-Thaqalain. And this story about this verse, verse 256, is mentioned in Tafsir Majma' al-Bayan. Tafsir Majma' al-Bayan is one of the most important and one of the most comprehensive tafsir of Holy Quran in the school of Ahlul Bayt alayhi salatu. In Tafsir Majma' al-Bayan from Ayyam alayhi salam is narrated that during the time of the Holy Prophet of Islam there was a person called Hasin. This Hasin with Swad, which means fox. In those days people used to have these crazy kind of names. So he's called Hasin and he has two sons. And he was a trader, as many people in Medina used to be at that time. So one day somebody comes to buy things from him, and those people who come to buy things from him are Christians. So they start talking to him, and he has two sons. So they start talking to his two sons and they invite his two sons towards Christianity. And so his two sons, who come from a Muslim family, his father's a Muslim, they become Christian. So he comes to the Holy Prophet of Islam and he says, Ya Rasulullah, my sons have become Christian. So, am I allowed to force them to become Muslim again? Can I make them be Muslims again because they've become Christian? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's messenger, he never used to speak unless revelation came down. So he waited for revelation to come down. When this person had come to tell Rasulullah about this, that his sons have become Christian, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed this verse, La ikraha fid din. There's no compulsion when it comes to religion. That means, if somebody wants to change their religion, then there's no compulsion. Right? Because in this scenario, these people, these two young men, they were Muslims and they became Christians, and the person had come to ask, Ya Rasulullah, can I force them to be Muslims again? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave the reply, no, you can't force them. La ikraha fid din. There's no compulsion when it comes to religion. But I can't use this verse to justify the fact that I don't want to do something, because I'm already a Muslim. I have already accepted Islam. This no compulsion is no compulsion in accepting religion. La ikraha fi din means there's no compulsion in accepting the religion of Islam. Once I've accepted the religion of Islam, once I've become a Muslim, now whatever Islam obligates me to do, I have to do it. I can't defend myself or use as an excuse that la ikraha fi din. No. That is only for a person who becomes a Muslim or becomes or accepts another religion. So this is one. But verse doesn't stop here, it continues. Why la ikraha fi din? Ya Allah, why is it that there's no compulsion in religion? قَدْ تَبَيَّنَ الرُّشْدُ مِنَ الْغَيِّ. There's no compulsion in religion because right and wrong has already been made mubayyan, it's been made clear. That's why there's no compulsion in religion. There is already clear what is rushd, what is guidance, what is correct, what is true, and what is false, and what is misguidance. Both of these have been made clear. Therefore, there's no compulsion. Now, you have the choice to accept the right, the truth, the guidance, or to accept something else. This is important for two reasons. Number one, because force is only necessary where there is no intellectual, reasonable arguments to convince somebody. Right? If I don't have convincing arguments, convincing discussion, or points that would be able to convince the other person, then I would have to force. But if I have the ability to convince somebody that this is correct, then I don't need any force. I don't need any compulsion, number one. Number two, which is even more important, is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to test me on the basis of why I accepted the faith. So therefore I have to accept the faith, not on the basis of force, but on the basis of being convinced of its arguments, of being convinced of its truthfulness. Because when I die and go in the grave and the angels ask me the questions about what did I used to believe, it won't be enough for me to say, yes, I used to believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because they're going to ask me, why did you believe? And I won't be able to say, I only believed because my father believed. Or I only believed because believing was the acceptable thing to do in my community and I didn't really know the reason why I believed. So, this is why there's no compulsion in religion. قَدْ تَبَيَّنَ الرُّشْدُ مِنَ الْغَيِّ فَمَنْ يَكْفُرْ بِالطَّاغُوتِ وَيُؤْمِنْ بِاللَّهِ. So whosoever rejects the Ta'ud, rejects the oppression, rejects the evil, Ta'ud here refers to every single kind of force that stands up against Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Whether that's shaitan, or whether it's my desires which lead me to go towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or whether it's any other oppressor who stands up against Allah or representatives of Allah in any given time. So that it would include the likes of Yazid, who stands up against Imam Hussain, and includes all the oppressors who stand up against all the imams of each respective time, and it includes all those who stand up against the law of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala even today. So فَمَنْ يَكْفُرْ بِالطَّاغُوتِ وَيُؤْمِنْ بِاللَّهِ. So It's interesting the order that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has mentioned this. He says that you have to reject the Taghut, reject everything that stands up in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and then yu'min billah, accept Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That in order to accept Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you have to reject all the false powers, all the false deities. And this is the same as the kalima that we also recite, the adhan that we say, the aqamat that we say, the testament of faith that we mention, ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, that we start with this فَمَنْ يَكْفُرْ بِالطَّاغُوتِ. We say what? La ilaha, there's no God. That means all this kufr and taghut and everything that stands against Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, la ilaha illallah, accept that there is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So even in this verse, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَيَكْفُرْ بِالطَّاغُوتِ وَيُؤْمِن بِاللَّهِ. What's going to happen to that person who does kufr, to all those who stand up against Allah, and then believes in Allah? فَقَدْ اسْتَمْسَكَ بِالْعُرْوَةِ الْوُثْقَى لَا انْفِصَامَ لَهَا. It's mentioned there. I just checked today actually in the tafsir of this word urwatul wuthqa. This word urwatul wuthqa is very famous and very well known for all the people in Hausa, because one of the books that we study is called urwatul wuthqa. And urwatul wuthqa, the literal meaning of this is the handle that's on the back of the door, that you use it to pull because it's so firm. And in this verse, in the meaning on this verse, in Tafsir al-Qumi of Ali ibn Ibrahim, is mentioned that Urwatul Wuthqa lan fisama laha, and it would never break. Whoever holds on to this firm handle, it would never break. So Ali ibn Ibrahim mentions from Aimma alayhi salatu salam that this Urwatul Wuthqa is the wilayat of Amirul Mu'mineen alayhi salatu salam. That in order to accept religion, la ikraha fi din, qad tabayyana rushdu min al-ghayy, faman yakfur bit-taghut wa yu'min billahi faqad istamsaka bil-urwati al-wuthqa la infisama laha wallahu sami'un alim. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is all seeing, all hearing. That in order to accept this faith, this religion, you have to come through wilayat of Amirul Mu'mineen alayhi salatu wasalam. That this pathway towards Tawheed is only through Amirul Mu'mineen alayhi afdalu salatu wasalam. Now today, like I said, every day we have a different title, different focus, in light of the same theme. The theme is the same regarding Tawheed of Ahlul Bayt. And that is that today's query, solution, issue that we want to raise is very important in light of Tawheed of Ahlul Bayt. Before that, a little introduction, and then we'll go towards that topic. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and we mentioned this briefly yesterday as well, that through His creations, through everything that exists in the universe, we recognize Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the Holy Prophet of Islam, when he came, we recognized him, we recognize Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through the Holy Prophet of Islam. Right? When the Holy Prophet of Islam came, he invited people to believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and he mentioned the arguments, and he mentioned those proofs about himself to prove that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala exists. Hopefully, in a later discussion we'll come to. But if you want to try to understand this point, you can use an example that you're all familiar with from mathematics. And that is, that when we're studying mathematics, I know I did it a very long time ago, but I still recall this particular point. And that is that when you want to draw a circle in mathematics, you have a compass and you put the pencil in the compass, you make sure it's firmly attached, and then you put the compass on the paper and you draw the circle around the compass, right? I'm sure you've all done it before. And the characteristic of that is that even though you place the compass in the middle of the page in order to draw the circle, when you draw the circle, it's only the circle on the page. The circumference of the circle is drawn on the page. The center is not there. You can't see it. Right? The center of the circle is not on the page. There's no mark that the center exists. But everybody, you ask them, you will say to them that I drew this circle using a compass. They will say that you must have drawn it because of the center. Is it possible, conceivable that somebody might say that no, center doesn't exist? The center of the circle doesn't exist. Why? Because I can't see it. No, they'll say, irrespective of the fact whether you can see it or not, but the circumference of the circle is proof, is dalalat that center exists. So similarly, ulama kalam say that the center is Tawheed and its circumference is Risalat, is the Prophet. So because of the Prophets, even though you can't see the center, but you know that the circumference, because of the existence of the circumference of the circle, you know that the center exists. So similarly, because of the wujud, the existence of prophets of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also exists. This circle, this circumference of the circle is a proof that the center exists. Now, matter is raised, objection is raised by most people in today's day and age, and by most people. If you say to them, for example, that why is it that you don't believe that God exists? Why do you reject that God exists? Then they would reply and they would say to you that, don't you see that there's so much evil in this world? So much evil in this world exists, and yet nothing is happening. Those people who commit evil, those people who commit oppression, nothing happens to them. And those people who are suffering, there's nobody to care for them. In addition to that, they'll refer to other kinds of evil. We don't go into that detail. Both of those topics are important, but we're only focusing on the evil that is perpetuated by the people. So they say, don't you see that there's so much evil in this world, there's so much oppression in this world, people are dying, people are being killed, people are dying of hunger, people are dying of starvation, all of this is happening. And, of course, the amazing thing is that I remember when I was a child, we used to go to majlis, and there used to be food there. My parents used to say to me that you're not allowed to waste the food. Why? They say to me, there's starving children in Africa. Right? There's starving children in Africa, so you're not allowed to waste food. Today, I would never have imagined that I would grow up and address majalis in the most developed country in the world, and I would have to say that unfortunately, there's not just starving children in Africa, there's starving children in the most developed country in the world as well. Unfortunately, I have to say that in one whole area, Flint, Michigan, there's people with no clean water in the most developed country in the world. So, in reality, all of these things, that person who doesn't believe in God will say to me that all of these things exist. How is it possible that there's people in the most developed country in the world and they don't have clean drinking water? So if God exists, why doesn't He do anything about this? Why isn't He doing anything about this? Why are the people suffering for no apparent reason or fault of their own? So, in order to answer this matter, we have to focus on a couple of important points very quickly. I'm going to try it because we want to conclude on time as well. That's why is it that evil exists? First of all, before we talk about why it isn't stopped, we have to ask, number one, why does evil exist? Why is it that somebody commits or does something that is evil? So either somebody does something which is evil because of their ignorance. They don't know that that thing is wrong, that's why they did it. Or number two, they do it because of their desire. They want to fulfill their desire as a result of doing that evil action. Or number three, they are forced by somebody else to do that evil action. Or number four, they have malevolence. They have a desire for somebody else to go through that evil. For this reason they do it. These are the four reasons why somebody might do something which is evil. All of these, or I change the sentence saying, none of these can apply to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Why? We said that He is omnipotent. He has all the power, He has all the qudra. He can't be forced by anybody to do anything. And He's also omniscient, He's alim. He knows everything, so there's nothing that is ignorant of. And He is also benevolent, so He doesn't do something out of malice or out of desire. So then why is it that evil exists in this universe? So for this, there's two theories that exist, and I'll mention them both very quickly, and then we'll come to what Ahlul Bayt ﷺ mentioned about this particular point. Recite a salawat ala Muhammad. The first theory is by, or rather we shouldn't call it a theory, we should call it a theodicy, because in philosophy or religion, regarding matters of theology, if there's a theory in religion, it's called a theodicy. The first one is by St. Augustine. St. Augustine, famous Christian theologian, famous Christian scholar, he says regarding evil, so this matter is asked to him, and they say that how do you resolve the matter that evil exists in this world, in this universe, and you also believe in an all-powerful, all-knowing, all-benevolent God as well? How is these two things reconcilable? That if He is all-powerful and all-knowing and benevolent as well, why doesn't He do anything to stop Him? So St. Augustine replies that in reality, evil as an entity, as a shay, as something, doesn't exist. Okay, so what is evil then? Yeah, Saint Augustine, what is evil? So he replies, evil is the privation of good. It is the absence of good. Wherever there's no good, wherever there's no khair, there will be evil. There will be shar. Says, what do you mean? How do you explain this? He says, it's exactly the same as when you say there's darkness. There is darkness. Does darkness exist? He says, no, darkness doesn't exist. What is darkness? Darkness is the absence of light. As soon as you turn on the light, darkness will disappear. So in reality, there's no such thing as darkness. It's just wherever there's no light, there is darkness. The same thing, he says, is with cold. And he gives this example. He says, if I asked you, can you bring me a jar of darkness? It's not possible. Because the moment you bring the darkness into light, it will disappear. He says, similarly, it's the same thing with cold. With evil, but with cold. Right? He says cold doesn't exist. Even though probably some of you saying here in the Midwest you say that maybe would like to challenge that notion. Recite Salawat ala Muhammad wa I remember last time when I came and we were in minus temperatures. So you might say, St. Augustine, maybe you should come and visit us here and then you'll know whether cold exists or not. But he says cold doesn't exist. So what is cold, ya St. Augustine? He says cold is just the absence of heat. So the moment that heat enters into a place, the coldness will disappear. So he says the same thing applies to good and evil. Wherever there's no evil, wherever there's no good, wherever that khair, that goodness doesn't exist, there would be evil in its place. But as soon as good comes, evil would disappear. So this is one theory from, or one theodicy from St. Augustine. Some time later after St. Augustine, there's another saint. It's called St. Irenaeus. St. Irenaeus is called the Irenaean theodicy. And he says, no, there's something more than what St. Augustine said regarding good and evil. In order to understand this, we have to know what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is, or God, and what is the human being. And when we understand both of these things, then we'll be able to understand why evil exists in this universe. And inshallah ta'ala, if I'm able to convey this point, we'll be able to understand and link this particular point to the event of Karbala, and then we'll be able to, inshallah, conclude the majlis. St. Irenaeus says, no, St. Augustine, there's more to it than this. You can't escape by saying that evil is just the privation of good. He says, no, you have to understand what is God and what is the human being and how has He created the human being. So he says, what is God? He says, God has created this universe through different means of creation. Right? It is possible for Him. He has the power, He has the ability to create without any means of creation. But He has chosen to create through means of creation. What does this mean? I'll give you a quick example. We mentioned Mubahala, I'll mention Mubahala again. When the people of Najran came and Rasulullah told them that no, Jesus is a servant of God, He is not the son of God, an ayat of Quran was revealed. Verse 59 of Surah Al Imran. In that ayat it says, Inna mathala Isa inda Allahi ka mathali Adam khalaqahu min turab thumma qala kun fayakun. Says, Ya Rasulullah, tell them that the example of Isa is exactly the same as Adam. We created him from clay, and then we said, ثُمَّ قَالَ كُنْ فَيَكُنْ, be, and he became. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying that I could have created every single human being through kun fayakun, to say be and it would become. But I chose not to. This is for another reason. It's the need of the human being to be created in this particular way, that he has to have parents, so he or she has to have parents, and has to grow up with the parents, and parents have to provide tarbiyah, so on and so forth. This is the need of the human being. Secondly, Saint Irenaeus says that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala hasn't created the human being as perfect. This is very important. It says Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala hasn't created human being as perfect. Then he says God has created human being with the potential to attain perfection. Allah has created, or God has created, and it says God has created human being with the potential, the ability to reach perfection. Whether or not human being reaches perfection is up to him or her. The choices that I will make in my life will decide whether I reach perfection or not. And I have to be allowed to make those choices in order for me to reach perfection. Why? Because there's things I will reach perfection through trial and error. I will do things, I will make mistakes, and then I will reach perfection. Have you noticed, I'm sure all of you who have young children will notice, that as soon as a child sees something new, they want to open it, they want to break it, they want to see what's inside. Right? This is because of the ability of the mind, of the brain to try something in order to understand how it works, in order to see how it works. And this is why the first thing before the child reaches the state of intellectual development, they'll put it in their mouth, because they'll see this is how I can sense this thing. And then when they get older, they'll want to open it and try and understand what's inside. This is all part of the journey and the potential for perfection. And all of this is only possible if the human being has the ability to make the choice between right and wrong. The ability to make that choice. And when the person has that ability to make that choice, then that person will be able to get to come out towards perfection. Interestingly, Saint Irenaeus says this, Holy Quran also tells us about this. لَقَدْ خَلَقْنَا الْإِنسَانَ فِي أَحْسَنِ تَقْوِيمٍ ثُمَّ رَدَدْنَاهُ أَسْفَلَ سَافِلِينَ. Surah 18, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, we created human being in the best mold. Meaning what? Meaning the same thing. We created human being with the mold that could reach perfection, has the ability to reach perfection. ثُمَّ رَدَدْنَاهُ أَسْفَلَ سَافِلِينَ. Then we reduced him to the lowest of the low. إِلَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ فَلَهُمْ أَجْرٌ غَيْرُ مَمْنُونٍ. Except for those who believe and do righteous deeds, for them there is a reward without any measure. But this ability for a person to know and understand that this is evil and then to make those choices. So today, when we see evil in this world, it's directly related to the choices that a particular human being has made in their lives. Right? One human being has made a particular choice in their life which has affected other people. Now it depends where that person is. If that person, for example, is the head of the family, that mistake, that error will affect the whole family. And if that person is the head of the tribe, will affect the whole tribe. And if that person is the head of the country, it will affect the whole country. And if that person is the leader of the free world, it will affect the whole world. So it just depends on how powerful that person is, but ultimately, Each and every act of evil is directly related to a choice that a human being has made, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has allowed that each and every human being the freedom to make that choice. Why? إِنَّا هَدَيْنَاهُ السَّبِيلَ إِمَّا شَاكِرًا وَإِمَّا كَفُورًا. We made, in that verse also he says there's no compulsion. We made right and wrong clear. In this verse also, this is in Surah Al-Insan, we made the path of guidance clear. إِنَّا هَدَيْنَاهُ السَّبِيلَ إِمَّا شَاكِرًا وَإِمَّا كَفُورًا. Now it's up to you whether you're grateful or you're ungrateful. But I have to have that ability to make that choice of being grateful or ungrateful. Otherwise, we're all robots. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala intervenes and forces me to make choices, then we're robots. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has not created robots. He's created human beings with the ability to make choices. Now if human beings make wrong choices, responsibility is on those people who make those wrong choices, and greater responsibility is on those who allow those people who make wrong choices in places of power, which would affect more and more people and ultimately affect everybody in the whole world. But the message from the day of Ashura is that yes, it's possible you, I, all of us would have made mistakes, made things wrong in our lives, but it's never too late to fix those mistakes. Number one, it's never too late to fix those mistakes, but there's a message in it for you and I as well. What happens? You see, there's a person, that person isn't very religious, that person isn't very observant, that person doesn't follow the religion. But one day, you and I, we don't know what happened to that person, but one day he decides to come to the mosque. And when he comes to the mosque, or she comes to the mosque, everybody starts pointing at that person. Oh, look at this person, what happened to them? They used to be doing X, Y, Z, now they decided to come to the mosque. The mosque, the Husayniyah, doesn't belong to you. It doesn't belong to me. It belongs to Allah, it belongs to Imam Hussain alayhi salam. And the message from Imam Hussain alayhi salam is that if he wanted to mock someone like this, he would have said it to her. Now you want to come and ask forgiveness from me? Now you want to ask forgiveness from me? But he doesn't. On the morning of Ashura, when Hur comes, he doesn't say to him, you're the one who's responsible for bringing me to this place. Even though he is. On 2nd of Muharram, 61 after Hijrah, the person responsible for bringing Imam Hussain alayhi salam to Karbala is Hur. But he doesn't say this, that you're the one responsible. If it wasn't for you, I would never have been in this place. Instead, what happens? Instead, on night of Ashura, before night of Ashura, on the morning of 9th of Muharram, morning of 9th of Muharram, Umar ibn Sa'd fires the first arrow towards the tents of Imam Hussain alayhi salam. Out of all the people, Imam Hussain alayhi salam sends Abu Fadl Abbas. He says, Abbas, go and tell Umar ibn Sa'd that we want one more night. We want one more night. We don't want to start the fighting today. Abu Fadl Abbas goes out. He addresses Umar ibn Sa'd. He says, you find the first arrow. And Umar ibn Sa'd fires the first arrow, and he says to the people around him, he says, be a witness that I fired the first arrow towards the tent of Hussain. Abu Fadl Abbas goes out and says to him that Imam Hussain alayhi salam says, we want one more night. night of Ashura. So this is the day of 9th of Muharram is past. Now it's the night of Ashura. The night between the 9th and the 10th. The person who's sharing the tent with Hur, he says to him, Hur, if somebody had asked me or any other day that who's the bravest person in Kufa, who's the best warrior in Kufa, who's the best archer in Kufa, I would have mentioned your name without any hesitation. But today, tonight, I see you in a state as though you're uncomfortable about something. And Hur says to him, you're right, I am uncomfortable. He says, what are you uncomfortable about? He says, I'm uncomfortable about the fact that I'm seeing myself in between paradise and hell. On one side is paradise, and the other side is hellfire, and I'm seeing myself in between these two places. So he stays up all night, he doesn't sleep. Morning of Ashura comes. Morning of Ashura comes, and he makes his decision that I reject hellfire, and I accept paradise. And he comes towards the side of Imam Hussain alayhi salam. Again, remember this point. Again, Imam Hussain alayhi salam sends out Abu Fadl Abbas. Abu Fadl Abbas guarding the tents. He says, oh my master, there's somebody coming from the enemy side. Imam Hussain alayhi salam says, Abbas, go and welcome him, he's my guest. Go and welcome him, he's my guest. So Abu Fadl Abbas, Ali al-Akbar, Imam Hussain alayhi salam, they all come out. Narrative states that Hur is accompanied with his son and his servants, and some narratives even say that his brother is there. So he says to his son, he says, oh my son, when I get close to Imam Hussain alayhi salam, then throw me off the horse so that I can go to the feet of Imam Hussain alayhi salam and ask for forgiveness. That if it wasn't for me, Imam Hussain alayhi salam would never have come to Karbala. So he comes close. When the horse comes close to Imam Hussain alayhi salam, he throws himself off the horse and he goes to the feet of Imam Hussain alayhi salam and he says, oh my master, can I be forgiven? Is there a possibility of my forgiveness? Imam Hussain alayhi salam says, Hur, I have forgiven you and Allah also has forgiven you. Imagine. I have forgiven you, Allah has also forgiven you. Then Imam Hussain alayhi salam says something so heartbreaking that every time I mention this story, it's something that is a testament towards how Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam lived their lives. Imam says what? He says, Hur, you know that when a guest comes to you, Allah Akbar. He says, you know when a guest comes to you, you want to give him something. You want to offer him something. But Hur, you've come to me at a time where I have nothing to offer you. Allah Akbar. I have nothing to offer you. The least, if somebody passes by your house and you say that even if you don't come inside, at least have a glass of water. Hussain alayhi salam says, I don't even have water to offer you. Allah. Imam Hussain alayhi salam says, I don't even have water to offer you. Hur ibn Yazid al-Riyai says, oh my master, I don't want water and I don't want anything from you. All I want is for me to be shaheed and to be saved and absolved of everything that I did. Hussain alayhi salatu wasalam says, oh. But he says, oh my master, first I want my son to go towards the battlefield. Allah. He says, first I want my son to go towards the battlefield. Son of Hur goes towards the battlefield. He fights valiantly. And then he is falling off his horse, so he calls out to his father Hur. When he calls out to his father, Hur wants to get up. As he's about to get up, Imam Hussain alayhi salam pats him on the shoulder and says, Hur, sit down. He sits down. He says, Hur, don't you know that it's mentioned in the Shariat of my grandfather that it's makruh for the father to go in front of the son when he's died. It's makruh for the father to come near the funeral of his son. It's mentioned that if a young son dies and his father is still alive, keep him far away from the body of his son. Why? Because his son has died in front of him. He will be heartbroken. Hussain alayhi salam says, Hur, you sit down. I will go to the funeral of your son. I will go to the body of your son. He goes near the son of Hur. He takes his head and puts it in his lap. Imagine, this is the son of Hur. Moments ago he's on the side of Yazid. Now he's died. His head is on the lap of the son of Zahra salamullah alayha. But I feel like saying that when the son of Hur died, Hussain alayhi salam prevented his father going towards his son's body. But when the son of Hussain alayhi salam died, when Ali al-Akbar was died, there will be nobody left. Hussain alayhi salam would call out the children of the tents. Oh, the children, come out and help me. I can't pick up this body of my son. I feel like saying at that moment, oh Hur, oh Habib, oh Zuhair, where are you? Where are you? Imam alayhi salam can't pick up this body. We've ended the majlis. One more thing to say about Hur. Those of you who've been for ziyarat know that body of Hur and the grave of Hur is far away from the Shuhada of Karbala. It's mentioned that his tribe, they buried him before Imam al-Sajjad alayhi salam came back to Karbala to bury all the other Shuhada. One day, after Hur had been killed, there was a wound on his forehead. So Imam Hussain alayhi salam had taken the handkerchief of his mother Fatima salamullah alayha and tied it to that wound. One day, one of the scholars who used to live in Karbala, he sees Imam alayhi salam in his dream. And Imam alayhi salam says to him that go towards the grave of Hur and see that there's water in the grave. So I want you to relocate the grave away from the water. That scholar says that in my mind I was thinking that some people have this objection that how is it possible that even after thousands of years the body of the Imam alayhi salam in the grave could stay fresh and it wouldn't decay. He says, I was thinking this matter in my mind when I went towards the grave of Hur. When I went towards the grave of Hur and I opened the grave and I saw that there's water in the grave and I wanted to remove the body to place it in a different place, I noticed that the body of Hur was fresh as though it had been buried on that same day. Allah. He says, when I opened the grave and I noticed that the handkerchief was tied on the forehead, I thought to myself that let me take this handkerchief of tabarruk from Fatima Az-Zahra. So he says, I took my own handkerchief and I tied it onto the head of Hur and I wanted to take that handkerchief. But when I tied my own handkerchief on the head of Hur, it started to bleed again. Allahu Akbar. It started to bleed again as though the body was still fresh. Then I tied another handkerchief. I tied all the handkerchiefs I had, but the blood would not stop flowing. Then I removed all the handkerchiefs and I put back the handkerchief of Fatima Salamullah alayha, and their blood stopped flowing again. I closed the grave. He says, then when I went for a majlis, I said, know that the grave, the imadi of the imams in the graves definitely stays fresh. When the servant of Imam Hur ibn Yazid al-Riyahi, his body is still fresh in the grave, then what to say of the Master Hussein alayhi salam? Ala wa la'natullahi ala al-qawmi al-zalimin wa sayyidina alladhina zalamu wa yamun qalabiyan qalibun inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. Master Hussein. Ya Hussein. Ya Hussein. Ya Hussein. Ya Hussein. Ya Hussein. Ya Hussein.